Truth is that you know it's all on you. You know you get to choose, yeah. So what you gonna do? Because it's all on you.
Greetings, good people. Welcome to another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. This is the South Bay edition where we chat with our South Bay leaders and those that are doing the work in the community. Today, we're going to talk about something that's important because a lot of y'all don't really understand the importance of judges in our election. How do I know that? Because people ask me all the time, Tanya, who should I vote for judge? Why do we even care about this? Why are we voting for the judge? Why don't they just go through a different process? Well, listen, we have someone here that's going to help us understand that whole process and why we should vote for him. Steve Napolitano is a state-appointed parole attorney helping people earn their second chance and turn away from crime. He has served 5 years, 5 whole terms, in Manhattan Beach as the mayor and a city councilman, over 30 years working to improve communities across LA County. The man is a proud father of 2. And if you happen to run on over to his website, you will see so many people that have endorsed his campaign. And I think today's a good day to find out why. So let's welcome Mr. Steve Napolitano. How you doing, sir?
Good. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Steve. It's good to see you.
Yes, we are super thrilled. I want to get right into it. So I'm going to let Paul get started with the questions for the people.
And it's great to speak with you. It's not often that I actually get to speak with a potential judge candidate. The voter information is very low on these things, and it's hard to know who to vote for. So this kind of outreach is really well planned and well appreciated. Why don't we just start with who you are and what you plan on, what you bring to the bench. We'll start there.
No, I appreciate that. And again, thank you for having me, because this is one of those things I call the flyover part of the ballot, where people just, if they don't know your name or don't know who you are, sometimes they don't even bother to vote for a judge. And so what I'm bringing is a diversity of experience to the bench. That's what my intention is to do, is to bring a diversity of experience. As Tanya said, I'm a state-appointed parole attorney. I am a 5-term city council member for the city of Manhattan Beach. I've also, though, served 12 years as senior deputy to Supervisor Don Kanabe. So I know our communities in LA County. I know what their expectations, what their hopes are, and what they want. And I know the issues of homelessness and crime and housing really from the get-go. I know those issues well. I've dealt with them on a personal basis. And so I want to bring all this experience to me with me to the bench, and addressing the issues that I would face as judge, whether that is in a criminal court, a civil court, family court, or whatever it is. And I have a great interest in the care court as well, dealing with getting the homeless folks back on a good path and getting them support and services and housing that they might need.
And I realize you're running for LA Superior Court, but just let's talk about homelessness and crime here in the South Bay. What are your feelings about it? Do you think it's on the rise? Do you think you've done a good job, quelling it, and along with the other cities, and the homeless situation that seems to be the forefront of a lot of conversation these days?
And yeah, in that respect, property crime has been on the rise in the beach cities. I got a lot of people who are checking the car doors every night. We have some smash and grab robberies. We've got people who are going into the stores, whether it be Target or whether it be the grocery stores, Ralph's and Vaughn's, taking things and walking out with them and confronting security, and just general things like that. A lot of property crime has increased, especially since COVID. And so we're dealing with those here in Manhattan Beach. We've hired more police officers. We plan to hire more. I think our other cities are doing that though, but it's very hard to hire police officers right now. It's a nationwide issue, actually, in getting more folks on the street, because fewer people want to become police officers. And in terms of homelessness, there ebbs and flows in the South Bay. I think that we've made great strides in the South Bay in addressing it. In Manhattan Beach, we've hired additional resources for outreach for folks to get them into housing and get them services. And I know Redondo and Hermosa, we've done that as well, working with them through grants through the county. And I think we've got a little bit of a knockdown in the percentage of overall homelessness in LA City, LA County right now, but we don't know how long it's going to hold. And especially since the grants pass decision at the Supreme Court, where some communities are going to be enforcing the anti-camping laws and others have decided not to. And then there you got LA County saying we're not going to put homeless in our jails if they're arrested for camping. So that's still playing out. Don't know how that's going to look eventually, but we're still pursuing the resources to get people into housing and into services and off the streets, because having people on the streets just helps nobody.
So the grants pass decision, you think is just going to shift homeless people around?
That's what a lot of folks are feeling right now. Whether that actually happens or not, we'll see. We haven't seen a great influx yet, but we do know that there are concerns among different cities as to whether or not they enforce the rules that they're now allowed to enforce, whether that's going to impact other neighboring communities. I know LA City has expressed their concerns that the homeless are going to go there. Well, every other community, the 87 other cities in LA County, are worried that the LA's homeless is going to go to their community. So it's a constant tension in trying to address homelessness in the county and in the South Bay.
I know that the city of Redondo Beach has got to put out an MOU among the other cities to basically work together and not dump their homeless on some of the other cities. Do you know Manhattan's position on that?
I have not seen that yet.
Okay.
It hasn't come across our agenda yet, so I'll take a look at it when it gets here, but I have not seen that. We've never dumped homeless in any other community. When we do our outreach, we have actually Manhattan Beach has purchased beds in shelters to make sure that they have a place to go if we contact them and they need it. We have participated in the Share Housing Project. We have our own community-based nonprofit called MB Safe that does outreach and gets these folks into housing. We don't push them elsewhere. We try and get them into the services and the housing that they need.
Maybe we should just touch on this. Are you terming out as a
Yes.
council? Okay.
I'm terming out. That's another reason. It's not. I'm not looking at the judge position as, I'm just going to find something else and land somewhere else, as so many politicians do. I really gave it a hard thought. I've not plotted to run for judge or become a judge for years, as some people do. At the end of last year, I knew I was going to be termed out this year, but I also knew I had 30 years of experience in helping our communities throughout LA County, and also nearly 25 years as an attorney and as a state appointed attorney dealing with folks in parole, and as administrative law judge and hearing officer, as a decision maker dealing with municipal code violations and the penalties associated with that. That's another thing that I do for cities and counties throughout the state. And so I thought, how can I bring all this together? What can I do to, again, make a difference? I mean, I've spent 30 years improving communities and making a difference in LA County and beyond. And I thought, well, what can I do? I kept coming back to judge, because judges make a difference. I think that, over the last several years, more and more people have realized how much judges matter in their daily lives, from the Supreme Court on down, right?
It's amazing the impact that they can have on people's lives across the nation, as we've seen. And touching your resume is undeniable. Your endorsements are impressive. Your opponent, I understand, has been given a rating of not qualified. Now,
I'm not aware of that. No, there were 4 people who ran in the primary.
Yes.
One of them was rated not qualified, but it wasn't my opponent.
Okay, and I'm just saying that it goes to electing judges. And if you have any thoughts on, should we actually elect judges, or should there be, I know they can get appointed by the governor, and it seems like the vetting process would be much more rigorous through that, as opposed to people just checking boxes because they look at one word. Usually if it's a sitting judge, they get a vote. If it's someone that's breaking into the thing, no matter how well qualified they are or unqualified they are, they really have a shot. And that can sometimes not always bring the best outcomes.
Right.
So, and I refer to this as you may know, Judge Lynn Olson.
Mm-hmm.
She's turned out to be an okay judge, but when she got on, it ruffled a lot of feathers because she displaced a very well qualified judge, which at the time, right after the election, Governor Schwarzenegger reinstated her. So it sometimes seems like people can see an opportunity and jump in on these judge or these bench appointments, and so I just like to know your thoughts on that.
No, absolutely. I have very mixed feelings about myself.
Okay.
In running for judge, I don't think that elections are necessarily the best thing to get judges, but the opposite is just as political as well, right? Judges are get there to the bench by one of two ways. It's either the election, they get elected in an election year where there's usually about 10 seats open at any given cycle, or then they're appointed, right? As judges retire along the way, they're appointed by the governor. But is that process any less political? Not really. It depends. You'd like to think that there's a whole group of objective people who are looking at these things. But do they look at what your party registration is? Sure they do. Do they look at what your resources are and who you donated to? All these things? Sure they do. All these things are factors. And, there are steps beyond that, of course, where they do a review. And the review is very similar to what the review is for people who are running for judge by the LA County Bar, right? There's the state bar does the same thing. They ask people, you have to give them a list of people, and they interview those people. They ask them about your qualifications, how you perform in court, or how what your demeanor is, what your temperament is, and things like that. So, is it a perfect system? No, not at all. Is any system perfect in appointing judges? No, not at all. I mean, we've seen that in certainly other venues. We see it as appointments to the federal bench, as to this person supported my campaign, so
Sure.
they get an appointment. It's not a perfect system, but one of the things about that too is it's a different kind of campaign. Yeah. As a judge, you're not allowed to you're not allowed to take positions on anything because that would imply bias. You can't say how you would rule in any given situation. You're not supposed to bash your opponents, which is a good thing, but we have that in other races. But in terms of how you determine how to do it, it's basically based on your qualifications, but then it's also resources.
Sure.
You need to get that word out to people so they understand what your qualifications are. It's difficult.
Steve, I want to talk to you about the juvenile justice system. And I would love to hear from you as a father, as a public servant, as someone that lives in one of the most, I would almost call Manhattan Beach is one of the most progressive places in the South Bay. Tell me your thoughts on the juvenile justice system. Have we come to a point where we are not holding parents accountable for some of the things that we're asking law enforcement, school administration, and others to resolve? I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, if you're talking about e-bikes, I think, yeah, absolutely. That seems to be the big issue. I mean, first world problems, right? The big issue in the South Bay is e-bikes and how kids using these things, they take off the governor. They can go up to 40 miles an hour without the governor on. They go up to 28 with the governor on it. And some are throttle, some are pedal assist. And they're running all over the place. They're running through stop signs. They're almost running down people. They're riding on sidewalks in places they're not supposed to ride. So that seems to be the big issue around here. And a lot of the city councils and the city leadership are, okay, where are the parents? We had a situation where there was a young guy, a juvenile, using an electric motorcycle on the Greenbelt, a parkway, and driving down that on a regular basis until finally it was caught. And it's not even a street legal motorcycle. It was for off-road, and you're not supposed to drive it anywhere in the city. So, what are the parents thinking buying this kid, a 13-year-old kid, a illegal off-road dirt bike that he obviously is riding around in the city? So a lot of people are saying, where's that? But, the other part about that, when you talk about what the juvenile justice system is, though, I think that you can say certainly the juvenile detention centers we've had have failed people. They in fact, probably turn the kids more into criminals than they do divert them away from crime by hardening them. And in Manhattan Beach, we've had a very successful diversion program for juveniles who break the rules. And there's going to come a point where someone is continuing to break the rules, that there's going to be consequences and ever an escalating severity of consequences for those folks if they just don't correct their course. But for folks who, juveniles who, especially first-time offenders, other folks who have just made a constant, low-level mistakes, we try and work with them, let them understand what the consequences of their actions are, put in place consequences if they don't follow through with perhaps getting substance abuse treatment, perhaps getting other sorts of anger management treatment, and working with community resources and putting in community service to basically atone for what they've done without sending them to the juvenile detention camps, which again, like I said, those have been looked at very hard in LA County recently, and they've been failing our youth.
So, but like you said, the gentleman that was, the kid that was riding the electric dirt bike up and down the green belt, is there any accountability for the parents that bought him that?
In terms of that, we have not to my knowledge. We impounded the bike, so they're out that money that they put for it. But I can only hope that they learn from it. But as far as consequences go, where we've seen recently how kids who turn to guns and use their guns against others, they have access in the house, and their parents don't oversee that and restrict that access. They're now being held accountable in the criminal courts for that. And so, yeah, are there citations? Are there things that can be given out? And that's what we look for.
Let me get a little deeper on this because it's relatively important to me. When I first moved here, I remember Beach City's Health District did a survey about the level of anxiety in beach cities. And it was high. And it was told, the report basically said that beach cities has the highest level of anxiety, stress, and mental health issues than any other part of LA County. Why is that? Probably a lot of pressure to maintain a particular lifestyle, access to resources to get more illegal substances that they shouldn't be having. And a lot of parents are just very busy and they're not giving parenting the time and energy it deserves, which then again leaves the issues to be dealt with by law enforcement and the education system in our communities. So as a judge, particularly under the umbrella of knowing that I'm an LA County commissioner, and I know for a fact that we only have one treatment center in the county for youth. Okay, plenty for adults. We only have one treatment facility in the county for young people, and it's still not mandatory that kids get treatment when they do start dealing with substance abuse. So as a judge, how would you weigh in on those factors, particularly when young people and their future is involved? And sometimes parents are kind of hands off with some of this stuff.
Well, and this is one of those things where you got to give a very frustrating answer to, because of the rules of a judicial campaign and the ethics that we have to follow. And so I can't say, based on those rules, that how I would deal with something specifically. Okay. Would I always send them to this? Would I always send them to that? And I think that's something, again, that differentiates me, is that it's a case-by-case basis. It's what is appropriate in that case. Now, would I send juveniles to diversion? Yes. Now, would it be a state mandate or a LA County one? there are other facilities available. I know there are other diversion programs. Well, I know because we exercise that here in the South Bay in different ways. But would I do that? Yes. Would I do it in all cases? Probably not. Some cases are going to it's going to be appropriate for, and some cases it's not going to be, though. So that's my best answer to that, given the rules I have to run by. But certainly I think diversion where it's appropriate is very important to have as a resource, because yeah, these kids, it's the undeveloped. I deal with this with my clients and in my parole work all the time, is that I have a lot of what were called youth offenders I'm dealing with now. They're 15, 25 years in the system in prison for something that they did when they were under the age of 26, because the undeveloped mind, right? And how you're shaking your head, right? When you're under the age of 26, your mind is not developed. You're impulsive. You're more impulsive than you are after the age of 26. You lack serious consequential thinking under the age of 26. And so this is when things can go seriously wrong, and they can go wrong for a long time going forward if the antisocial traits just embed themselves here. So it is important to address these things early on and to show kids what the consequences are, what impulse control should be and needs to be to prevent them from victimizing either themselves or somebody else.
I think Manhattan Beach does a really good job in regards to their parks and recs and opportunities for young people. What else, as a dad, so not as a candidate, but as a dad, would you like to see here in the South Bay for young people?
Great question. I think it's a matter of balance too, though. When you talk about, we have lots of programs. I think that generally the cities in the South Bay provide a lot of great programs for youth. But like you said, aside from those programs, there's lots of activities that they do in school. There's lots of extracurricular things, because everyone wants their kid to go to college and achieve and everything. So that adds a lot of pressure on them too. So I think it's programs that don't put pressure on them, allow them to be kids, allow them to interact with each other, whether it's through sports or whether it's a hobby or a craft or something like that. We have a teen center in Manhattan Beach that is well utilized, that has lots of different things. Kids need to decompress too. It's not all about getting the straight A's and getting into the most qualified college and Ivy League that you can. That's the pressure that you were talking about earlier, and they need a diversion away from that. And I know that in the Beach Cities Health District, you were talking about that earlier, Paul, Beach Cities Health District, they've got a great resource now called Alcove. And so that is for the mental health and well-being of our youth. And I know several people who have taken advantage of that, and it's done wonders for them. It really has. And the point of that is, though, that we need more of them in LA County, not just in the South Bay, right? We're able to come together and understand the value of that. But other areas that might not be able to afford or fund those things, they need those things. And that's where the county and the state should step in and provide those as well.
Okay, so we're going to put you on the spot. Will you be supporting the Beach Cities Health District bond that'll be issued?
I'm going to take a closer look at it. I haven't made a decision on that, but I know they do good work. I know that a lot of people tie, the different things in with it, though. Alcove has been very successful. Would I like to see that continue? Yes. Would I like to see expanded? Yes. Am I going to hold that accountable for the healthy living campus issues and things like that? No, because I see that as two separate things.
Okay. Just because you're here selling yourself, no, I'm sorry, poor choice of words. You're here running.
Here to talk.
You're here to talk and campaign for your goal. Is there a particular instance, and you don't have to say names, of working with a youth that really succeeded? Something that you'd really like to share with people?
Oh boy. There's lots of different ones. I don't want to get into specifics. I can certainly get into specifics with the clients I have as a parole attorney, though, and where I have seen rehabilitation is a real thing, and it's important to know that. And whatever your age is, there are redeeming values in everyone that we can tap into, given the time and resources. But I've certainly come across kids in the South Bay here who have abused substances, who have been failing school, not showing up to school. And I've been able to talk with them and put them on a path to get the resources that they need, including the things that we just talked about, including ALCO, including diversion, away from the issues that were following them. And they've come back to me at, I'm choking up, at graduation. I was able to attend the graduation of a couple of them recently, and it was amazing. They graduated, they're going to El Camino, and they're on a path of success now. People measure success by different ways. These people graduating, I mean, would have been unheard of,
Sure.
given their background. If you saw what they had to go through, it was amazing.
Steve, I want to ask you, because you've been in Manhattan Beach for a very long time. So that means you've been a part of the Bruce's Beach saga. I know that the city did not issue a formal apology to the family, but I want to get your thoughts on the whole issue that took place and where things are now.
Actually, we did issue a formal apology.
Oh, we missed that.
We did. We issued.
Was there some delay in that, or not a unanimous effort in that?
Yes, that's correct. What happened was we went through, this issue came up after the murder of George Floyd, and it'd been known in Manhattan Beach, and it would have been recorded in books and such, but not to the extent that we dove into the history of it. After that, there was a call to dive deeper into it, and we did that. We put together a citizens task force, and I was on that, and with another colleague of mine at the time, Hildy Stern, who was serving on council, and they did a deep dive into the history and called for certain things. And what we did was we put together, there was a plaque out at the park that wasn't the site of the Bruce's property, because that was on the Strand that the county now owns and has a lifeguard headquarters on. And so they moved, county separate on their property, they moved to put up a plaque honoring the history. And of course, that they made an effort to give the property back through the state legislature and through the county to give the property back. Ultimately, it settled on the family sold it back to the county, and they got 21 for it. On the city side, there were 4 other families, Black-owned properties in the area where the park is. And so what we did, we had a plaque out there that was very misinformed, well-intentioned at the time, which was, I think, 2007, but very poorly informed. Basically, put the credit to Peck, George Peck, the former owner there, and so it wasn't well informed. So after the deep dive into the history, which again helped inform the county's plaque, we redid that. At that unveiling, I gave an apology to all the families on behalf of myself as mayor at that time. And that was, we had an election recently as well. And so we had 2 new council members, Amy Holworth and David Lesser. And the following week after that event, David Lesser, Jim, I believe it was David, he agendized a formal apology by saying, before we did acknowledgement. And that was at the end, I argued for an apology. I wrote an apology. And it was pretty much my written apology that was then carried forward in the David Lesser's motion to bring that back and have that considered. It was a 4-1 vote, but that apology was adopted. And that new plaque stands up there. The plaque was stolen not too long after for the bronze. We replaced it in better form and more secure. out there now. But we continue to work on that, though. We had a great Juneteenth celebration on the actual June 19th. We had an event at the park, and then on the weekend we had a celebratory commemoration at the Polylone Park, which was much larger. And then we still have an art piece that's going to be a commemorative art piece that's going to go out there at the park as well.
So
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Just want to say I'm so sorry that I missed that part. I know that there was a lot of pushback from the community, though. So how did you deal with that and move forward in issuing the apology? That's kind of, I think that must have been where I got lost at, because there was a lot of pushback. I kept reading and I was following, and as a commissioner, I had been at a lot of those events. So as a leader, how did you deal with the pushback from your community in what you were trying to get done?
We heard some concerns that there were some anonymous email newsletter things going out that were very misinformed and lacking in facts, certainly. And so, what we did was, that's what leadership is about, right? Is that you take the best information that you have, make the best decisions that you can with that. And that's how we pushed forward. There was a vocal minority, I believe, and there different people had different concerns. Some people were concerned about litigation. Some people were concerned about smearing the name of Manhattan Beach. Some people were concerned about what this meant in terms of the property and the park and everything like that. None of those concerns, in my mind, rose to where it didn't call for doing the right thing. How I was raised is when you do something wrong, you say you're sorry for it. And so that's why I ended up doing it.
And as far as the future of the property, it basically just changed hands. It was deeded back to the Bruce family, or parts of it, and then they sold it back to the county. And now is the future just essentially what it is now is going to remain?
That's my understanding. On the county part of it, that deal is done. On the city part of it, it's an established park. It's been for decades now. The event itself took place 100 years ago. The compensation at the time can argue over whether it was right or wrong. The four families that were located in the park area purchased property in Manhattan Beach after that.
Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah, the only folks who didn't, family who didn't repurchase property in the area after the condemnation was the Bruces.
Interesting. I wanted to talk to you really quick about law enforcement. The chiefs in the South Bay have been amazing. I love Jason Hart, Keith Kaufman here in Redonda. You guys have had an amazing chief, and now you have a new chief. Can you talk to me about her? And then what is the relationship with judges as collaborators, or what would you call it, with chiefs and law enforcement in the service area that they would be serving? Help the public understand how that works.
Rachel Johnson is our chief now, and she came from, she's been here for a few years now, actually. A couple, I believe it is. And
there's still a lot of people that didn't even know Manhattan Beach had a new chief. I was like, she's great. She is great. We had a town hall meeting last night to just give the community an update over crime statistics and what the department is doing for folks in the community. And it goes back to the idea of where judges fit in, where the police fit in. It's the justice system in the South Bay and in actually LA County and most anywhere. It's not one thing, it's several things working together, right? It's the police department enforcing the laws, making arrests. Those arrests then get reviewed by the district attorney's office. They decide whether to proceed, whether there's enough evidence to proceed with a case, or not to proceed for other reasons, depending on what the political inclinations might be at the time. But then it goes to a trial or a plea. And that's when it gets before a judge in court.
And so that's the inner workings, right, of our criminal justice system in LA County and beyond, is that these are things that need to work together to keep people safe and to make sure that people's rights are preserved and that the right thing is followed at all times.
But on some level, you have the police officers, right? That pretty black and white. If it's against the law and you did it, I have to arrest you. By the time it shows up in front of you, my understanding is that you also have a level of discretion on how you deal with things. Now, if your discretion and your decisions and how you feel about a case differs from, let's say, the officer that did the arresting, like what is that relationship like? How do we kumbaya this or not? And I'm trying to get you to help the public understand it doesn't necessarily coordinate. Sometimes you can feel differently than the officer that did the arresting. Sometimes, everybody does not feel the same about a situation because I'm trying to get them to understand. So help me help them.
Well, judges have a certain amount of discretion in sentencing, depending on what the situation is and what the crime is and the facts of that. But in terms of the police officer, the arresting officers, typically, unless they serve as a witness, you're not going to hear what their disposition of crimes. It should be remembered that officers have a great amount of discretion too, again, depending on the situation. Now, obviously, if it's a serious crime, their arrests are going to be made. If it's more of a misdemeanor situation, the officer feels that an arrest isn't appropriate, and they think that, well, okay, just pick up your, let's say, e-bike and go, or don't ride it on the sidewalk anymore, or hey, put that thing back that you were about to walk out with. They can make those judgments in the field, and it's not going to reach the bench. But again, there's that intermediary too of the district attorney's office, because the prosecutors, right, they bring the case forward, depending on whether they feel there's enough evidence to actually get a conviction on that. And if they feel there is, they bring it forward, and then the judge would have discretion. Again, not in all instances, because there are some mandatory sentencing issues there, but in a lot of them, you have discretion over what the consequences of that crime are going to be. And that might be, again, for a juvenile or homeless or addicted, it might be diversion. It might be some other program that's appropriate for what that situation is, or it might be jail or prison, depending on how long the sentence would be.
How do you balance parenthood and public service? How do you do that?
Well, if you ask my kids, they might say not as well as I should. They understand. They understand that I've been in public service for
For a long time.
The vast majority of my life. I've been in public service. And they understand that I spend my time serving others, and I do my best to balance those things out. But there are a lot of things, a lot of appointments, a lot of meetings, a lot of things like that, where I to meet those obligations, I unfortunately have to miss some things, some school projects, some soccer games, some things like that, and they seem to understand, but I'll check in with their therapist about 10 years from now. I can tell you then.
I wanted the people to see your site. I think it's important. My goal is to make America read again. I don't know what else everybody else has going on, but take the time. When people are running for office, go to their site, see who supports them, see what they are talking about, what is important to them, what makes them who they are. I thought that this was a pretty impressive list. I mean, my boss is on here, Holly Mitchell. But my question is, in a time where people don't really agree on much, how did you get all these people to endorse you? What kind of magic are you spreading around the South Bay and through the communities that you've served?
I think from being in public service for as long as I have, they know me to be fair and biased and independent in my thinking. And I'm not praying, I make it very clear. I want to bring to the bench justice without political agendas. And some folks bring a political agenda to the bench. They want to say that they're going to only go this way or they're only going to go that way on something. To me, justice is not a right or left question. And so that's why I've got a lot of bipartisan support. Again, I've worked with a lot of these folks. They know who I am. They know what I stand for. They know I'm going to be fair, unbiased, and independent. And that's why they've signed on with me. I have made no promises to anyone that I'm going to be, this way or that way on the bench. I think that's wrong because, again, we're supposed to be, if justice is blind, we need to approach this again in a fair, unbiased, and independent way.
That leads into what I want to talk about next, which is the High Rose Project. And I realize that being a mayor is different than being a judge, but the High Rose Project, for people out there that don't know, it's a development project that was put in North Manhattan Beach up in El Porto, and basically an abandoned property. And the developer came in, wanted to build 52 units, worked with the city of Manhattan Beach.
79 units.
Okay, well, it ended up being 79, but the initial proposal was 52, but working with the city of Manhattan, they were giving bonuses, density bonuses for low income housing. And it was a very symbiotic relationship. The proposal went forward. The Manhattan Beach Planning Commission unanimously approved it, and then it got to the council and it hit a lot of headwinds. And they got to the point where the council rejected the proposal, knowing full well that they really didn't have a legal reason to reject it. The plan followed every single rule, and everything about it was within the limits. And it seemed like the council and when you were mayor, you played this game of like legal, showdown that ended up working out. I mean, there was a change in the council membership, and the vote was changed there. But it seems like that was serving the community. I realize as mayor, you serve your community. You have constituents that have a lot of concerns, but there's got to be a point where you tell people like, look, this complies. We can't break the law. I watched Redondo do a very similar thing with the Legato project. And it seems like that kind of judgment needs to be explained, because you want to be a judge.
Well, and you said it very well at the beginning that there is a difference between being in an elected political position and an elected judge, because, and I explained where I am running for judge on that. Again, fair, unbiased, and independent as a judge. As a elected official and mayor, city council member for Manhattan Beach, I'm an advocate for my community. And so one thing I want to be clear is that it wasn't the city that said, oh, put more units in there. The developer in that process, that project, took advantage, which is their right to do, of the density bonus law in the state. So this law has been on the books for the last 40 years, but rarely used. And because it's been rarely used, it's not always been, everything hasn't always been worked out on it, and interpretation of it. So we looked at that. And, when you say, well, this was clearly, actually, they didn't look at air pollution as one of the environmental factors. And that's what I brought up in my decision there, is that it needed to be looked at least before the project went forward. So my vote at the time was that this needed to be looked at as a matter of environmental concern, because it was next to the Chevron refinery there in El Segundo. And air quality, they had done, and I accepted the fact that there was no issue with pollution in the ground and pollution in the water that was next to it, but they never measured air pollution next to it for the people that were going to live there. And so, and it included some affordable housing units. That's how they got. When you include a certain percentage of the units as affordable, then you can use the density bonus to go beyond what local zoning allows for. So it's higher and bigger in density and intensity than it would otherwise be allowed under our code, because they took advantage of this density housing bonus law. But the one thing, like I said, wasn't looked at was air quality. And that's what my vote was based on. That's why it's. Now, I'll give you another example, though, of that. And recently, I made a decision, again, as an administrative law judge, a hearing officer, for the city of Hermosa Beach, right in Manhattan Beach. The community is very much against short-term rentals, but we lost a lawsuit in the appeals court over short-term rentals in the coastal zone, because the coastal commission, which is in conflict, I think, with our housing goals overall in the state at this point, to keep long-term housing for rentals. The coastal commission loves short-term rentals, and they love them in the coastal zone. But I see that as a conflict. But where others can address that through legislation, we pushed back. We said, okay, take us to court. We went to court. We lost on that, and we now allow short-term rentals in the coastal zone in Manhattan Beach. In Hermosa Beach, they don't do that. But I was their hearing officer on a case that was brought before me, and I ruled in favor of the short-term rental that was being the building that was being used as short-term rental. I ruled in favor of that, despite all my biases, personal biases against them. I had to set, again, this is what you want to judge: set aside your personal biases and follow the law on these things.
So when Manhattan Beach denied the high rise permit initially, 48 hours, the state's attorney general and a number of housing outfits or organizations were going to sue Manhattan Beach. And again, it seemed like anybody could say, like, yeah, you guys really aren't going to win this suit. You're just going down a dead end. And I know that the deciding vote was made by the new council person. So that didn't change your position of knowing that you were in a really unwinnable situation.
Well, again, these things were untested. It was untested whether or not it would it satisfied CEQA in terms of the air quality out there. So whether we would have won or not, I don't know.
Okay.
Until a judge rules on that, you never know. But these are fine points of law that I still think deserve to be addressed at the time. And again, the air quality had not been addressed even in the final. All I asked for was address the air quality, make sure that it's going to be okay for the people. If you used a blank piece of paper now and you were designing a community, I don't think you'd have it as close as you would next to a refinery, as we are. And so I think that you look at that, and you look at where the location of this new housing was going to be, and you say, you know what, you should at least study it before it's approved. And that's what I said.
Okay, I understand that. There is housing right across the street across the Rosecrans.
Right, but would we do that now is the question. Would you do that today? I have serious, especially when legislation has come down the pipe recently saying you need to be build no closer than 500 feet, no, in some instances more than 1,500 feet away from any kind of oil production, including wells. I mean, they recently have come up with taking wells and making houses, any future housing, at least 1,500 feet away from it. They want people 500 feet away at least from freeways now, because they are pushing it. If you've driven the 110 through downtown LA and you see those Renaissance apartments, those
Yes.
are right next to the freeway. That is not a healthy place to live for the people that are there. Now, I know we need housing, but we need places where people aren't going to get cancer because they've got cars, going by their window 24/7, 365 days a year. That's not good planning.
That's not good planning. In that, do you think there's liability to the city for if these people get lung cancer and suddenly they're saying, "Oh, well, you guys let me live here. I'm suing the city."
And that would be for a judge to decide.
Sure.
That's what civil cases are for. I can see someone suing in the future for that. Sure.
Wow. Well, Steve, I want to thank you for being here. I have a final question for you. Give me 3 words that you would never want affiliated with you.
3 words.
3 words.
Oh boy. Lazy.
That's awesome.
Uncaring. And I would say rich for the sake of being rich.
Well, you're definitely not lazy. I know that. Your resume proves that.
Definitely
Of course.
rich for the sake of being okay. Well, listen, well, rich for what's the point then?
Of being rich,
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
I helping others.
I like someone.
Oops.
And we were talking about money, and it was like
Oh, your screen's frozen.
Yep. She froze up.
live without, live without having to think about money. So maybe that's it. I don't know, but I want to thank you for being here, for taking the time to talk to the people. Let the people know how they can support you, and kind of, what's next if you get this judgeship. What can they expect from you as a resident, as a civil servant? Because there's this thing about, you have a habit, you've built a habit over the years, so you can't just be a judge. Like, I don't expect that from you. So
I'm going to continue to give back every way I can. There will be, if I'm lucky enough to become a judge, then there'll be limits on, again, what I can do and say that would imply bias one way or another on things. But I'll continue to serve my community in the greater South Bay and LA County and beyond to the extent that I can. I don't have any goals whatsoever beyond judge. I would be more than happy to become a judge and stay there, because it's an extension really of what I'm doing now with my clients in the parole work. It's being able to work with people on a one-on-one basis, again, to try and set them on the better path, the right path again, if they've strayed from that path. And whether that's through diversion as appropriate, or even jail or prison. Some of my clients will tell you the best thing that happened to them was going to prison, because otherwise they'd still be out there victimizing people. And they learned, what their own issues were that led to that, going into prison, and they rehabilitate themselves and they come out and be productive citizens. The folks I work with have a less than 1% recidivism rate. And so that's something that we can all be proud about. And I want to work with these folks as a judge, again, in the same type of capacity to set them on that right path. And that's where criminal law, and there's lots of other things that I can do as judge as well, whether it be through the care court, working with the homeless, or working with those folks who are addicted or who otherwise need help in juvenile court and everything else. I really look forward to that. I want the nitty gritty. That's why I'm running. I don't want to oversee the crime of the century and become some known personality as a judge. I don't want that at all. I want to work with the nitty gritty of the justice system, the small claims courts, the misdemeanors, people I can talk to, people I can put on the right path, people I can say, okay, what were you thinking? Let's get you in a program or something that fixes this, and again, makes you a productive citizen going forward.
Okay. In a future that you do get elected to be judge and you're successful, what do you anticipate? Speaking of nitty gritty, what do you anticipate as your first assignment?
Oh, I have no idea. The presiding judge decides where you go and what you do. That's actually a question I get all the time, right? I'm running for seat number 39, right? And everyone wants to know, what is seat 39? And seat 39 is really a fiction. You have to divide things up so people know what they're going to run for and apply for, and who they're voting for. And seat 39 really means nothing. It's just an open seat. But the presiding judge, once someone gets elected, decides where you're going to go, what courthouse you're going to work in, and what law you're going to oversee. Like I said, it could be family, it could be juvenile, it could be criminal, it could be civil, could be care court. So,
okay.
Well, anything else before we get out of here, Paul?
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
thank you. Thanks for this conversation. I really appreciate it. I always love engaging with folks. And since COVID, I haven't had a chance to do it as much as I used to. So I really like coming on here. Thank you.
Appreciate you so much. Hey, thanks for your service, first of all, and good luck.
Thank you. And the website's stevenapolitano.com.
Absolutely. All right, guys. See you next time.
Hey, thanks for showing up to the podcast where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. When you get a sec, take a moment, leave a comment. What you think about today's episode, and share it with someone that you know could use the gems that were dropped today. Follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss who's coming up next. You never know who could show up here and what they could say. For your professional needs, marketing, PR, communications, and leadership, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Sand and Shores, or hit us up at sandandshores.com. Again, thanks so much for showing up. We appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.